I feel like there's a better chance Daniel Jones is their week 1 starter than Anthony Richardson.
I don't think I was going to be able to go that next play, so this whole saying I just needed a break right there.
You know, I was pretty harsh last episode on Anthony Richardson, and rightfully so. Like, you know, you can't do that.
Something crazy is happening behind the scenes in Indianapolis that's about to change everything. The Athletic just dropped a bombshell report that has Anthony Richardson's future looking bleaker than ever. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got here and why this might be one of the most dramatic quarterback stories we've seen in quite some time. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to get the latest NFL news to your device throughout the offseason. And really quickly, before we get to this video is sponsored. Today's video is sponsored by Aura. If you ever wondered how scammers get your phone number or why your inbox is flooded with spam, here's how. There are companies called data brokers that sell your data. They do it without your consent, and this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They sell it to marketers, scammers, and even stalkers, which is why I'm very passionate about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura is an all-in-one digital security. You may already have a digital security tool, but not having Aura is like locking the front door but leaving the back door open. With Aura, you get alerts if your personal info is found on the dark web, real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking, 24/7 monitoring to help keep your identity secure, a secure VPN, antivirus, password manager, and more. And on top of that, you have US-based support that's around 24/7 just in case something goes wrong. Right now, you can try Aura for free at aura.com/microphone for a free 2-week trial and see if any of your data has been exposed. I highly recommend doing this just to see what's out there because I found out that a lot of my passwords have been compromised and I immediately changed them upon using Aura. That's aura.com/microphone for a free 2-week trial, and thank you, Aura, for today's sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? 2 years ago, Anthony Richardson walked into the NFL Combine and did something that had never been done before. At 6'4", 244 pounds, this dude ran a 4.43 40-yard dash. According to multiple scouting reports, he posted a 40.5-inch vertical jump, which was a quarterback record, and a 10.9 broad jump, which was also a quarterback record. No player in NFL history had ever combined his size with these athletic numbers. Sports Illustrated called him a physical phenomenon, and honestly, watching his highlights, you could see why. Picture this: you've got a quarterback who's bigger than Cam Newton, faster than Lamar Jackson, and can jump higher than Russell Wilson. Pro Football Network said that Anthony Richardson had historic athleticism that scouts had never seen before at the position. When he ran that 4.43, grown men in NFL front offices started salivating because they were looking at what they thought was the future of the position. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is going to be important for what happens later. Richardson only threw 393 passes in his entire college career. For context, most starting quarterbacks throw that many passes in one season, but Richardson started just 13 games at Florida over 3 years. And here's the kicker: he was actually benched during his sophomore season for poor performance. At the Combine, when asked about his 53.8% completion percentage, Richardson said, "I also can't catch every pass," which was a response that should have been a massive red flag, especially considering the fact that we've been on top of Shedeur Sanders for this line about his offensive line.
How many times did Raul get touched? Of course, whenever you're able to run the ball consistently and whenever you're able to, then that opens up the pass, you know? But it's just like you got to understand like what your team good at. So it's like, why would we keep running the ball if we out there and we get in a situation where it's a must get and we don't get it? But if we're going to go down, I'd rather go down swinging because I know I could throw the best punch.
And this wasn't the only red flag. Walter Football called him the most inaccurate early round quarterback prospect that he's ever seen. The Huddle scouting report said his accuracy was concerning at best and abysmal at worst. Now remember those numbers because they're going to become really important when I tell you what's happening right now in Indianapolis. But first you need to understand the delusion that resulted in one of the worst decisions in recent draft history. You might be wondering why the Indianapolis Colts took him 4th overall. And that's because of one player and one player only: Josh Allen. The Buffalo Bills quarterback had become the poster child for quarterback development, going from a 56.2% college passer to an MVP caliber player. Chris Ballard, the Colts GM, literally said, "One thing we're seeing in the league right now is guys you can work on and get them more accurate," basically betting Richardson's entire career on the Josh Allen developmental model. But here's where the Colts got it completely wrong. According to detailed draft analysis, Josh Allen completed 56.2% of his passes in college and had 44 career starts starts at Wyoming. Richardson, on the other hand, had a 53.8% completion percentage and just 13 starts. Allen threw 649 career passes in college. Richardson threw 393. Allen was also a 3-year starter who showed steady improvement, whereas Anthony Richardson was benched multiple times. Yahoo Sports ran an article titled, "If there's a Josh Allen in the 2023 NFL draft class, it's Anthony Richardson." But the comparison was lazy and surface level at best. Allen had the college experience and gradual development. Richardson was all potential and no production, but it didn't matter. The Colts' late owner, Jim Irsay, was completely smitten, saying that Richardson had something special in his heart and spirit and his soul, and that decision was unanimous among the organization. Head coach Shane Steichen said that the Colts fell in love with Richardson's makeup and his ability to learn. But here's what's crazy. Anthony Richardson's NFL numbers aren't just bad, they're historically catastrophic. Richardson ranks 222nd out of 225 quarterbacks with 250 plus dropbacks since 2000. Let that sink in. There have been 225 quarterbacks with significant playing time since 2000, and only 3 have been worse than Anthony Richardson. We're talking about a completion percentage so bad that ESPN's QBR system basically broke trying to rate him. But wait, it gets even worse, because before Anthony Richardson got benched, his completion percentage was 44.4%, the worst in the NFL by a significant margin and approaching Tim Tebow territory. His interception rate was a 5.3%, which would make him the first quarterback since Brett Favre in 2010 to maintain that rate over a full season. His yards per attempt was just 6.7, which ranks him in the bottom 10% of all NFL quarterbacks since 2000. Yardbarker published an article titled 5 Mind-Boggling Stats That Show How Poorly Anthony Richardson Has Played, and one stat in particular stuck out. Richardson threw more interceptions than touchdown passes in his final 4 starts before being benched. For a 4th overall pick in his second season, that's almost unheard of. But stats are just a number on a screen. What really killed Anthony Richardson's career happened on October 27, 2024, and I guarantee you've never heard the full story of what happened that day, because I didn't until I did my research for this video. On October 27, 2024, the Indianapolis Colts faced off against their division rival Houston Texans at Lucas Oil Stadium. This was supposed to be Richardson's statement game, a chance to prove that he belonged in the conversation with young quarterbacks like CJ Stroud, who was playing for the visiting Texans. In the third quarter, during 3rd and goal from the 23-yard line, Indianapolis was down 23-13 in a crucial division game that could determine playoff positioning. And this is where franchise quarterbacks are made, right? This is the moment where you show your teammates, your coaches, and your fans that you're willing to fight through everything and anything to win. But instead, after a play where Anthony Richardson scrambled, he decided to voluntarily remove him from the game. And when he was asked why afterward, he said this.
Man, tired. I ain't gonna lie. That was a lot of running right there. What I did, I don't think I was gonna be able to go that next play. So just told saying I just needed a break right there.
So according to CBS Sports' detailed breakdown, Richardson had just completed a 15-yard run on the previous play. He came to the sideline and told coach Shane Steichen that he needed a break. In the biggest moment of the game as the starting quarterback of an NFL team, Horseshoe Heroes reported that the moment left teammates puzzled and frustrated because it was completely unprecedented. And you have to understand, this was the first time in NFL history that a quarterback voluntarily removed him from a game while completely healthy. Not because of injury, not because of a timeout, but because he was tired. And here's the worst part. Richardson was caught yawning on the sideline after this happened, and it was captured on camera and went viral instantly. The optics for this situation couldn't have been worse. The reaction was absolutely nuclear. Pat McAfee, who's typically supportive of the Indianapolis Colts organization and Colts players, went ballistic.
Get this guy the off of our team.
And it wasn't just Pat McAfee.
You just lost respect of every football player and every quarterback and every offensive lineman to ever have played the game. I've never seen this in my entire life. It is unexcusable. It is inexplicable. He should be seriously thought about getting benched.
But also Chase Daniel would later on say this.
You know, I was pretty harsh last episode on Anthony Richardson, and rightfully so. Like, you know, you can't do that.
Even Cam Newton, who's known for defending young quarterbacks, lost it.
Anthony Richardson, get your shit together. Because this is the big leagues, bro. Nobody gives a
that you're tired.
BVM Sports called Richardson's actions inexcusable, and former NFL players across social media were not too kind about it either. And I didn't know about this when I made a video on it 8 months ago, but this caused a locker room mutiny. According to multiple reports, the Colts locker room basically went into revolt after this incident. DeForest Buckner, the veteran defensive tackle, had to lead multiple veteran meetings to address what he called concerns they had with the young quarterback. Veteran linebacker Zaire Franklin was more direct, telling Richardson, just lie, like you stole something, you hear me? Basically saying Richardson should have made up an injury excuse rather than admit that he was tired. But here's where it gets even worse. When the Colts announced that Richardson was being benched for Joe Flacco, wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. found out through social media, not from the team. Your number one wide receiver finding out that your quarterback just got benched from Twitter? That's organizational dysfunction at the highest level. ESPN sources described Richardson as naive about the expectations of being a franchise quarterback. And reports emerged that Richardson only started arriving at the facility at 5:30 to 6 a.m. after getting benched, suggesting his work ethic had been questioned internally. Stampede Blue even published a conspiracy report suggesting that owner Jim Irsay was behind the benching decision because he was embarrassed by the national criticism of his prized pick. But while all this drama was happening, Richardson was dealing with something that might be even more damaging to his career, a body that can't seem to stay healthy. Since being drafted, Richardson has missed 17 out of 34 possible games due to injury, which is a staggering 50% availability rate. Let me walk you through this injury timeline because it's honestly depressing. Week 1 of his rookie year, Richardson suffers a knee injury in his very first NFL game. In week 2 against the Texans, he gets a concussion while scoring a rushing touchdown. The irony is he got hurt doing what he was supposed to be great at, using his athleticism. Then came the big one. Week 5 on October 8th, 2023 versus Tennessee. Richardson suffers a grade 3 AC joint sprain to his throwing shoulder and his rookie season is over. Just like that, 13 weeks ended before they really began. When 2024 started, Anthony Richardson started off with a bang, completing without a doubt one of the best throws of the season in week 1. But then hip and oblique injuries would cost him 2 more games in the middle of the season, and according to the Blue Stable, these recurring injuries raised more concerns about the long-term direction for the Indianapolis Colts, because the pattern was becoming obvious. And here's the kicker, in June of 2025, that same shoulder from 2023 started acting up again during minicamp. ESPN reported that Richardson is sidelined with a shoulder injury and missed mandatory practice sessions. Despite getting a second opinion, there was no change in Anthony Richardson's outlook, according to his head coach. Chris Ballard finally admitted what everyone was thinking: we can't beat our head against the wall. He's not proven that he can play in 17 games, which was brutal honesty from your own GM, basically saying that they can't count on their franchise quarterback to stay healthy. But while Richardson was dealing with injuries and drama, the Colts front office was making a move that nobody saw coming. A move that basically tells you everything you need to know about how they really feel about their young quarterback. On March 13, 2025, the Indianapolis Colts signed Daniel Jones to a 1-year, $14 million deal. Now you might be thinking,
okay, Mike, they signed a backup quarterback, so what?
But dig deeper, and this signing is absolutely devastating for Anthony Richardson. ESPN reported that Jones turned down Minnesota because he saw a higher likelihood of playing with the Colts, meaning he saw Anthony Richardson as a much more beatable quarterback during the offseason and in minicamp than JJ McCarthy was. And that's despite the Vikings team having a much better supporting cast. Think about that for a second. Daniel Jones just got cut by the Giants after posting a 2-8 record as a starter, and he thinks he has a better shot at starting in Indianapolis than Richardson does. But it gets crazier when you look at the money. That $14 million, 13.15 of it is guaranteed, more than Richardson's entire cap hit for 2025. You don't pay a backup quarterback $14 million unless if you're planning for him to play significant snaps. For context, most backup quarterbacks make between $3 and $8 million a year. The Colts gave Jones more guaranteed money than teams typically give to proven starters on bridge contracts. This wasn't a camp arm signing, this was a direct threat to Anthony Richardson's future. According to multiple reports, Jones specifically chose Indianapolis because he believed he could compete for the starting job immediately. Jones has 69 career starts compared to Richardson's 15. And despite his struggles in New York, he's 4-0 against the AFC South with an 81 total QBR in those games. And then just a few days ago, The Athletic dropped a report that basically confirmed what we all suspected was happening behind the scenes in Indianapolis. On June 23, 2025, James Boyd from The Athletic writes that Daniel Jones is quarterback one for now, and reports that Jones took all first-team reps during mandatory during minicamp, while Richardson was out with that shoulder injury I mentioned earlier. But here's the part that should terrify Richardson. During minicamp drills, Jones went 9 for 13 with 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. For a guy who was just cut by another team, those are impressive numbers in his first few weeks learning a new system. Shane Steichen's praise was telling. He's been doing a hell of a job, really smart football player, and he learned the offense very quickly. Compare that to what Shane Steichen has said about Richardson recently, which has been the most generic coach speak about development and growth. Bleacher Report reported that Jones had a significant lead over Richardson for the starting job, and sports betting markets have actually made Jones the favorite to start week 1. When Vegas thinks a guy who got cut is more likely to start than your former 4th overall pick, that's not a good sign. Heavy.com is predicting that Jones will win NFL Comeback Player of the Year in 2025, essentially betting that he'll not only beat out Richardson, but have a career resurgence. BVM Sports published an article with the same prediction, suggesting the narrative around Jones in Indianapolis is incredibly positive. Meanwhile, ESPN published an in-depth piece about how patience yields to urgency with Richardson, suggesting that the organization has lost faith in his developmental timeline. Yahoo Sports published projected stat lines for both quarterbacks, and they have Jones significantly outperforming Richardson in every major category. But before I tell you what I believe is going to happen next, you need to understand how bad the situation has been historically for other quarterbacks in Anthony Richardson's situation, because Richardson's story fits into a larger pattern of quarterback failures that should scare every Colts fan. Here's a sobering statistic for you. Since 2000, first-round quarterbacks have only had a 46% success rate. According to ESPN, 44.4% end up as disappointments, and only 49% manage even one 4,000-yard season. And in recent years, it's gotten even worse. Josh Rosen got traded after one season for just a 2nd and a 5th round pick, one of the worst returns on a first-round QB in NFL history. Trey Lance, who the 49ers gave up 3 first-round picks for, got traded for a 4th rounder after just 4 career starts. Sam Darnold was the 3rd overall pick in 2018 and was traded by the Jets after 3 seasons for a 6th round pick. Mitchell Trubisky was taken 2nd overall in 2017 and was out of Chicago after 4 years. The list of recent first-round quarterback failures is staggering, and most of them had better college resumes than Anthony Richardson did. But here's what's really scary. Most of those busts had accuracy issues in college that followed them to the NFL. According to CBS Sports' analysis of quarterback development, quarterbacks who complete less than 60% of their passes in college have historically struggled to develop accuracy at the NFL level. And the Colts? They should have known better than anyone about quarterback instability. Since Andrew Luck retired in 2019, they've started 10 different quarterbacks in 6 years. Jacoby Brissett, Brian Hoyer, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Sam Ehlinger, Nick Foles, Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco, and now potentially Daniel Jones. The results? No playoff wins since 2018, no division titles since 2014, and they've spent over $200 million on quarterback contracts in that span with virtually nothing to show for it. Anthony Richardson was supposed to end this cycle, but instead, he might be perpetuating it. So what happens next? Well, I personally see 3 possible scenarios for Anthony Richardson, and honestly, after researching this story for weeks, only one of them seems realistic anymore. The first scenario is Anthony Richardson becomes the next coming of Josh Allen. This is the optimistic scenario where Richardson somehow develops accuracy in year 3, beats out Daniel Jones for the starting job, and becomes the franchise quarterback Indianapolis thought they were getting. The comparisons to Josh Allen are still theoretically possible, but here's why the math doesn't work. Allen improved his accuracy by 17% from college to his breakout 3rd season, going from 56.2% in college to 69.2% in his 3rd NFL season. Anthony Richardson needs to improve by over 20% just to be average, going from 53.8% in college to at least 65% in the NFL. And that doesn't bode too well for Richardson when you take a look at his completion percentage from this past season, 44.7%. But here's the bigger issue. Allen had stability in time. Richardson has Daniel Jones breathing down his neck and an organization that's clearly lost patience. I give the Josh Allen miracle happening a 15% chance. The second scenario is Anthony Richardson gets traded. This scenario has Richardson getting traded in the next 6 to 12 months for whatever the Colts can get. According to Stadium Rant's analysis, Richardson's current trade value is a conditional 4th round pick that could become a 3rd based on playing time. Potential destinations are interesting, but it wouldn't be a team that would make him QB1 right away. I guess the most ideal situation would be if Pittsburgh wanted a long-term quarterback solution and if Tennessee wants to potentially potentially add competition to Will Levis and Cam Ward. Again, these wouldn't be scenarios where Anthony Richardson would compete right away, nor would it be a scenario that would make a lot of sense. Typically in these situations, it's a team popping up out of nowhere, giving up a 4th round pick just based on the potential of the player. Very similarly to what the Cowboys did when they traded for Trey Lance and made him QB number 3. But the financial reality is brutal. The Colts would eat a $10 million dead cap hit if they trade Richardson, which is a massive admission of failure for a player that they just drafted 2 years ago. But I give this a 35% chance of happening. The next scenario is, in my opinion, the most likely scenario, and that's that Anthony Richardson becomes a career backup, very similarly to what happened to Mitch Trubisky and briefly what happened to Sam Darnold. This might be the best outcome for Richardson as well. Jones wins the starting job, performs adequately, and Richardson becomes what he probably should have been all along, a developmental project who sits for 2 to 3 years like Jordan Love did in Green Bay. And the historical precedent still exists. Several quarterbacks have recovered from terrible starts by sitting and learning. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre, Steve Young sat behind Joe Montana, and more recently, Jordan Love sat behind Aaron Rodgers. The question is whether Richardson's ego and the outside pressure will allow him to accept a backup role. Stampede Blue published analysis suggesting that Richardson's benching was more indicative of a lack of maturity than performance-based, which doesn't bode well for his ability to handle being a backup. But here's what really gets me about this whole situation and why Anthony Richardson's story matters beyond just one player's career. Richardson's story is really the story of the modern NFL's biggest problem. Teams no longer want to wait for quarterback development. We've created this culture where potential is more important than production, where athletic measurables trump actual football skills, and where social media pressure accelerates every timeline. The Desert News published a detailed analysis called "When Will NFL Teams Learn That You Can't Rush a Rookie QB Onto the Field?" And the data is clear. Quarterbacks who start immediately have lower success rates than those who sit and learn. But in 2025, you can't hide a struggling quarterback. There was literally a social media movement to free Anthony Richardson when he got benched, with fans demanding he gets another chance despite his obvious struggles. When you compare that to how the Packers handled Jordan Love or how the Chiefs developed Patrick Mahomes by letting him sit behind Alex Smith for a year, according to detailed analysis of quarterback development, the most successful quarterbacks often had time to develop without the pressure of starting immediately. Look, I want to be clear, Anthony Richardson is still just 22 years old. He's younger than some rookies coming into the league this year. The athletic tools are undeniable, and if he ever figures out accuracy and stays healthy, he could be special. But the NFL is unforgiving, and with Daniel Jones reportedly having a significant lead for the starting job according to recent reports, Richardson's window is closing fast. The combination of injuries, poor performance, and that infamous tap-out moment has created a perfect storm that might end his starting career before it really had the chance to get off the ground. Is this really the end of Anthony Richardson? What do you think is going to become of him? Especially if you're a Colts fan, I want you to let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think is going to become of him? Aside from that, I don't know if you guys heard, but Damon Arnett and Henry Ruggs are in the midst of making a comeback in their NFL careers. I made a completely separate video, and I'm going to leave it in the end screen to meet you guys there. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.